As we welcome in the former executive producer of Hockey Night in Canada, his podcast, 100% Hockey with Darren Millard, typically Monday, Wednesday, Friday. The most famous man from Oliver, British Columbia, John Shannon. How are you?
Happy Monday, boys. Hope you spent Mother's Day doing the appropriate things.
I got a reprieve this year. She was traveling, so we will spoil her when she comes back.
I just for the record, at my house, I walked into my wife's and I said, "Happy Mother's Day," and she said, "I'm not your mother."
So
I was off the hook too.
Oh, good.
There you go.
Last week you told us you thought it was maybe the best weekend ever for the Stanley Cup playoffs in the first round with those two terrific Game 7s, and then this weekend we get a buzzer beater, John.
Well, can
Not your traditional buzzer beater, but a buzzer beater nonetheless.
Just for the record, I'm trying to talk to the contacts in Las Vegas because I want to build T-shirts that they .4 on them because I think that would sell. I think that would be a big seller for at least a couple of weeks. And
if they win the series, even more so.
Yeah, they got to win the series.
Put a little money in our pockets, boys. Come on now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Before we get on to more Stanley Cup playoffs, I want to talk to you here on the Canucks side of things. You were saying to us when you came on, all quiet on the Western Front here.
Very, very quiet. Obviously, teams are now prepping for the draft and having some of their scouting meetings. But at the same time, that's not the real issue right now in Vancouver. It's who's going to be the next coach. And there are names out there, but at the same time, you do have to wonder if they're waiting for somebody that's on a staff, or they're still waiting for some other ducks to fall around the league. So it's gone beyond the discussions of Mike Vellucci for sure, and Mike Vellucci and Manny Malhotra. And we'll have to see what happens.
Well, ask you a variation of the poll question. Like, is there an amount of winning that Malhotra can do here in the playoffs that gets him the job? Like at this point, if he gets to one more round, is it just a fait accompli, or is his success this season sort of already cemented and it's considered and it's not going to change?
I think that they're looking at long range, so short-term success like the Abbotsford team is having now really doesn't come into play unless there's something that happens in a series that that the powers that be are watching the game and look and see what he does in a certain scenario and say, wow, that's a guy we have. I have talked to a couple of former teammates of Manny's in the last week or so, and they can't say enough about him.
Mm-hmm.
They can't say enough how prepared he is, how focused he is, but that does not help you in the column of NHL head coach experience. And so that's the one thing that becomes a factor. If they're adamant that the coach has to have NHL head coaching experience, then Manny can't be on the list.
Right, because if you're looking at AHL playoff success, Todd Nelson's the guy.
Yeah,
with all of his success.
Well,
I've known Todd a long time, and I heard you guys talk about Todd last week, actually. And I wonder if Todd's time has passed.
Yeah,
and has he become a lifetime American League coach, a lifetime development coach? That's not a knock at Todd, but I do wonder if that's the case.
Yeah, the John Anderson name comes to mind there, right? Legendary AHL coach, had great success. In fact, had Nelson as an assistant when they won an AHL championship way back when with the Chicago Wolves. Adored figure. Everybody loved him, particularly young players, and that's kind of why he got pigeonholed into that AHL head coaching job.
Well, and I'm not sure, and I say this out of maybe too much honesty. I'm not sure you want to be put in the same column as John Anderson.
Mm-hmm.
John Anderson could not cope at the National Hockey League level. He couldn't. And so a life in The American League, a life in minor pro hockey, was where John should have stayed and didn't. And when he did get the job in Atlanta, remember we had a team in Atlanta once?
Yeah.
And maybe again. But
it's on my list here to discuss.
So the practical side of it is that, if Todd is in the John Anderson realm, then I don't think he's going to get much of a chance to coach in this league.
Help me out on Manny on this side of things. Somebody mentioned to me he might be exactly the profile of coach that the Pittsburgh Penguins are looking for. Someone who can step in, instantly have the respect of Sidney Crosby and Malkin because of his history, and he's just a revered figure amongst players, but also, work with the young players. And then somebody else told me they didn't think Manny and Dubas were particularly close because Manny bounced around a little bit in the Leafs organization when he was there. What do you know there?
I had not considered that. Although what I will say is that Kyle has a plan, and if certain people fit into the plan, like Jason Spezza has fit into his plan as an assistant general manager, and I'm sure at some point will be named the general manager when Kyle moves to just become the president. I'm not saying that's imminent; that's years away. But I do think that Kyle would identify and represent what a guy like Manny could bring, and that's when you say that, Matt. That's one of the challenges the Canucks have is that there are other people watching American League hockey too, and you don't want to lose somebody in your organization, the talent of Manny Malhotra, to some other club, and so. The moment that occurs, then all of a sudden Manny has leverage. So I'm not suggesting he does right now, but when you think about it, other teams are looking for coaches as well, or looking for people to help out. And I know Manny likes living in the Lower Mainland. He likes his lifestyle, but his goal is to be a head coach in the National Hockey League, and there's only one in that area. So from that perspective, you have to watch it.
Dennis Bernstein in LA reporting that DJ Smith has interviewed with several teams. I don't know if the Canucks are on that list. Does that surprise you? This is a guy, we've talked about second chancers a lot. This guy had a long runway in Ottawa and just lost a lot of games. Are you surprised that DJ Smith is getting a look?
No, I actually would put DJ Smith in Pittsburgh before I'd put Manny Malhotra because, Kyle Dubas and DJ Smith do have a relationship as well. From DJ's time in Toronto when Kyle was here, and DJ is interesting because it was DJ's team that beat out Kyle's junior team too. Oshawa beat Sault Ste. Marie in the year that Oshawa won the Memorial Cup. So there is a relationship between DJ and Kyle that would seem to fit, I think, better than most.
And poor DJ, he'd be taking over a team that's sort of in no man's land, much like that Ottawa team he had as well. I don't know that he's going to improve his career winning percentage if he takes that Pittsburgh team.
But he, as I've said to other places, 32, it's an exclusive club.
No,
and when you get a chance to
absolutely.
When you get a chance to coach in the National Hockey League, you coach in the National Hockey League.
Yeah.
If Rick Tocchet is named the head coach of the Seattle Kraken this week, would that surprise you, John?
Yes, it would.
There's some smoke they've already offered him the job.
Well, maybe they have. I just, his son doesn't live in Seattle anymore. The whole concept of going home to family, being closer, doesn't seem to make much sense then, and you have to take a man at his word that he wanted to be closer to family. And last I checked, Seattle's not closer to family.
Yeah, apparently that was more Rutherford than Tocchet.
Oh, Rick's in the quotes. It's Rick's quote. So,
yeah. Something may have changed there, John. If he is named the head coach of the Kraken, do Canucks fans have a license to be upset?
Absolutely. I think they do. That would bother me. as a Canuck fan, if Rick Tocchet takes the job in Seattle, to me, that's got a little bit of an odor to it.
Doesn't look good on the franchise, does it?
On Vancouver?
Yeah. He's the one that's like, I'm just done with you. I'm walking away.
Yeah, well, but I don't know what to say. Like, I mean, it's one of those ones where if a guy's not happy, because not every franchise, not every team is a perfect match. Not everyone is a perfect match. If a guy's not happy and he can afford to take the risk of being without a contract for 6 weeks, then take it. Rick knew that he was going to be a hot commodity this summer, and he got to pick and choose. And we certainly know the Canucks situation is not perfect, but I don't think it's a condemnation completely of what's going on with one. And we've talked about this in a great hockey town. If you want to win, and you want a following, and you want to coach in a hockey hotbed, do you want to coach in Vancouver? Or do you want to coach in Seattle? Seriously, Vancouver is. I mean, you are on such a pedestal in Vancouver. There has to be some level of attractiveness to it.
Well, and traditionally, John, as you know, like these hockey men don't like to admit defeat. They like to think that they can turn something around, that they can be a part of a solution. Yeah. And it sort of feels like, especially if he takes the Kraken job, it sort of feels like he was like, yeah, I can't do it there. And I don't see a future there. And I don't think I can turn this around and fix it.
But that's, to me, in my mind, with Rick making that decision. And by the way, the Canucks gave him the right to make that decision.
Yeah.
I would say, you don't want people in your organization not happy. You don't.
No, for sure.
So you want, if he says, well, I'm not sure, I'm waffling, I'd really like to look at other options. I'm not sure you want him in your organization in the first place.
Yeah, it should, and you're 100% correct. It should. That's just often not what we see in this business, in the sports business.
You're
right.
You're right. I mean, again, that goes back to the exclusivity of being one of 32. And people think, well, I'm never going to get another chance. Rick knew he was going to get another chance.
And that's the biggest thing. Yeah.
Rick knew the market and knows the market. And I think there are still other vacancies that Rick would be considering. When you think about, in my mind, Boston and obviously Philadelphia, but Boston to me is the one that looks pretty good to me.
John, the man's name is Vernon Krause, and he's the guy behind the Arena Project in Forsyth County, Georgia, suburban Atlanta. He did an interview on Friday with local television and said his group is in the home stretch to present a completed package to Gary Bettman and the NHL board or whomever when the playoffs are over, while also acknowledging he is one of several groups that is pursuing the NHL's return to Atlanta for a third time. Of course, the commissioner tamped it down because that's what Gary does with expansion. But you tell me, how real is expansion to Atlanta? How real is Vernon Krause and his group with the Suburban Arena Project to get a team?
Well, Vernon Krause is the real deal. He is very rich. I think, let me put it to you this way. Vernon Krause, when the tariffs came in for the cars and then President Trump signed a deal with the UK, Mr. Krause's Rolls-Royce franchise did okay. So we're talking a guy that's got deep, deep pockets. Now, what he's developing in Forsyth County, which is the county north of Fulton County, which is where Atlanta is, so it's in the suburbs, is a bigger development than just a hockey arena. It is residential, it is corporate, it is commercial. The county is completely on board. The next phase for Mr. Krause and his group is to go and present to Gary their plan. Gary and Bill, not to the board yet. They're a long way from going to the board. And we're still talking about 2029 or 2030 for a team to exist, I think, in Atlanta, if it happens. But it's incumbent on a classic case of, if you build it, they will come. or they will come if you build it. So the concept of this development in Forsyth County will only occur with an arena if he knows that Gary and Bill and then eventually the board agree to give them a franchise. So he's building the development. The development is on its way. It's whether it has an arena or not is the key. And that's where they have to go and get permission or some sort of wink or a nod from the commissioner to say, yeah, that makes a ton of sense for us.
At which time they become the largest North American sports league. And I don't know that that's a title that you necessarily want. Like, where are we going here? Are we going to 47 teams here eventually? Like, this is the smallest economy of the major sports almost. And
it's the most regional.
And yet they just keep growing, John. Is it healthy?
Well, but so let's do the math. How many franchises in the United States in Major League Baseball?
30, right?
29, because the Jays
29?
are in Canada. 29.
Oh, okay, yes.
Obviously, there's 32 NFL teams.
Yeah.
How many NBA teams are there in the United States?
31?
No.
29? Is it 20?
They're a 30 team league. They're going to go to Vegas and Seattle to get to 32. How many NHL teams are in the United States?
25.
25. That's the matrix.
Right.
That's what the thought process is. In order
to 30
to
American teams.
Get to 29 at least American teams. 29 American teams will get you to 36.
Yeah.
And it's simple. Be in every top 10 market. Hockey's not in every top 10 U.S. market. They're missing three.
Atlanta,
they're missing
Houston.
3 right now.
Mm-hmm.
Who is that? Atlanta, Houston, and who else?
Where do you think? Phoenix.
Oh gosh, yeah.
So that's the math about it. Now we had Gary on 100%, and I asked him. I said, "Do you have to get to 29 American teams?" And he didn't say no, but he also didn't say yes.
Mm-hmm.
But you can't go and sell to major corporations national packages of advertising and commercial endorsements if you're not comparing apples to apples. Right. And so if you're in that many less markets, and we're talking about big markets like Houston, huge. Houston, Atlanta, for sure, huge. And those, to me, those are the first 2 cities.
But John, here's what I would say to the commissioner and the plan. Do they want hockey? Atlanta has rejected NHL hockey twice.
Well, the only thing, and I've asked this question of people involved in the Atlanta situation, and the answer is the personality and the demography of what Atlanta has changed so drastically in the last 10 years. And the amount of people that have moved to Atlanta and the amount of people that have moved to the Atlanta suburbs. It's one of the reasons why the Braves were not a successful financial franchise downtown. Have you seen what the Braves done in the suburbs?
They've done very well going to the suburbs, and it was terrifying leaving that old rink, the Phillips Center downtown Atlanta, right, John, after games because no one was there.
It wasn't even fun to get to.
No, it was horrible. Centennial Olympic Park is as scared as I have ever been in a major U.S. downtown, and that is saying something. That you can make a memorial park to your Olympics, and it could be that dangerous.
You move to where the people are. You move to where the money is, you can be successful. And
Houston is number
4.
Yeah, I've got to miss 5, but
it's a huge market.
9 and 10 for Atlanta and Phoenix, respectively. Yeah. And you're right. I mean, you don't need a big piece of that pie to equate having a much larger piece of the pie in Pittsburgh. You know,
right? So now you're on our side. Now you believe in expansion, Blake. That's good.
Well, I understand the theory, but the execution and the reality might be different. That's the only thing, right? There's a lot of great things that are great in theory that don't execute well.
So here's the other question. You 2 entrepreneurs, how How much?
Well, that's the big question.
That's why
they love
wanna,
those expansion revenues. One would say they're addicted to those expansion revenues after.
How about 1.5 billion?
I was going to say more than $1 billion, right? Yep, absolutely. Okay, sir, you have a marvelous week. And have you golfed yet?
No.
My.
Today's the first day.
It's May 12th.
Today's the first day it's actually going to be pleasant overnight.
I mean, I sure hope you get around to golfing before the middle of May.
It was pretty nice this weekend. I was there this weekend. It was pretty nice.
You weren't part of the protest outside the stadium, Blake?
I was not. No.
I was teasing him about that. You know, they were there for his glorious arrival. Wait a second. A Vancouver guy is calling our game. Let's protest and walk out.
Oh, no, Blake. It's the great thing about Blake can say he was Toronto for at least a couple.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right. That's right.
And by the way, there's nothing worse than a transplanted Easterner in British Columbia, Mr. Sakaris.
Look. He's trying to out you.
I mean, how many years do you have to live here to be a British Columbia? He is doxing me. How dare you? It's all right. I'll go through Oliver next week or next month when I'm visiting. I'll say, yes, the town John Shannon abandoned.
Oh, yes.
No, hey, listen, the Shannon name's all over town. It's all over town.
In spray paint, yeah.
Yeah, that's right. JS was here.
That's right.
See you, John.
Bye, John.
Cheers. Bye.